back. Week 8 of CELTA training. I'm super cash today. Actually, I'm just about to head to the gym. But let me tell you what we did for week 8. It was the same thing, except for on Tuesday, we had an input session in the first half of the session. And then the second half of the session, I had to do lesson observations with the candidates. I'll tell you a little bit about that. And then we had regular sessions on Thursday morning. Right. Okay. So here's how it went. The first session was on authentic material, and it was an 1.5-hour session. We went through the advantages and disadvantages, taking into consideration some things that we need to think about when we're using authentic materials in the classroom. The session was, it started with some pictures of different things, and was to find the odd man out and of authentic materials and a graded reader. And it was funny because it was all different. There was like podcasts and books and all sorts of other stuff. And the teachers were able to identify some differences. They're like, well, it might be this one because it's da da da. And they're like, no. And so it was interesting because it took them a second to find out that the graded reader was the odd man out in all of the authentic materials. Then we went into the definition. Again, I say we. I'm observing. I have no authority in this course whatsoever. But we talked about the definition of authentic material. In breakout rooms, they had some handouts to do, brainstorming authentic materials, what could be used in what contexts. There was multiple, there's a typo in my notes, I'm fixing it. There's multiple definitions from as far back as 1988 to 2005 of what authentic materials are. Then again, the teachers went to breakout rooms to brainstorm some of the advantages and disadvantages. And then we had kind of like a whole group discussion, and some concrete examples were given on the board. Then they had another task to make some considerations. Pretty much like suitability, exploitability, readability, presentation, et cetera. We talked a little bit about parsnips. And as this is a course that is regulated by Cambridge, I kind of kept my mouth shut a little bit. But the tutor, Sergio, he handled it with absolute grace, because we have to talk about parsnips in terms of raising awareness that there are sensitive subjects and that we have to think about them and consider them, and not necessarily exclude them, just that we have to make considerations, that we have to think about the audience that they're going to. So he handled it quite well. I am a big proponent of talking about parsnips in class because I think it's important, but I understand that we are training people for the international market. And so these are things that they need to be aware of and possibly avoided. Okay. Then they did a practical exercise with a news report from YouTube. They discussed the level, the focus of the video, what they could do with it. They brainstormed some activities, etc. And then we wrapped up the session. Then it was my turn, and I took them through an 1.5-hour long session of lesson observation. And what it was a phonology session, actually, because they've had a couple sessions on phonology, and the next session for the next week was on connected speech. So I found a lesson on connected speech so that they could see it and refer back to it, especially when they were doing the next input session in week 9. And so I kind of guided them through. They were they were tasked to look at materials prior to observing the lesson, think about the focus, the main aims of the lesson, think about the different stages, and then periodically through the observation task, I would stop and allow them to brainstorm and talk to each other in breakout rooms things that the teacher was doing well, things that they might reconsider, things that they might deliver in a different way, etc. And then at the end, I gave them the lesson plan from the what the teacher had proposed, so that they could see kind of her perspective in developing the materials in the lesson plan. What was interesting was, and there is a podcast about this coming up, that the teachers are quite critical. And I think that this happens just in general. Like, teachers are always looking for flaws. I don't know if we're hyper trained to identify errors or mistakes, but honestly, this is not these teachers specifically. I'm reflecting in general. I mean, I'm going outside of the CELTA now. The teachers are really brutal on each other. And so I would leave with this message that if you are going to criticize or critique or try to give constructive criticism, which would be the best option, constructive criticism to another teacher based on how they're delivering a lesson, you should do so in a way that you try to understand their perspective and what their objective was. Because sometimes what happens, I think that this happens frequently, is that we have an idea of what we want to do in the classroom, and then our delivery might be off for whatever reason, like your timing is off, or the students don't get it, or your instructions are bad, or the task that you developed, like it didn't happen the way that you anticipated it to happen. Anyways, so I think that we have to, think about like what was the objective, and maybe it was just poor execution on the teacher's part, but the intentions were good. It's not that they don't know what they're doing. It's just that maybe it just didn't come off great. Again, there's so many dynamics in the classroom. We have to be kind of considerate. The other thing is that if you're going to give constructive criticism to a person about the way that they're delivering lessons, please offer some advice or some suggestions. Because what I notice happens is exactly this. I noticed this, I saw this, I noticed that, I saw that, I listened to this. Okay, and like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like if we're doing this, and again, this is not hypercritical of the CELTA group, because this happened a little bit with them, but this happens a lot with other teachers outside of CELTA. So if you're going to sit there and watch a lesson, like, then offer something. Well, I noticed that the students were doing this, and I don't think that that was your objective. And so what I would recommend, have you thought about possibly doing it this way? And, seeing if that's successful with this group. Again, there's a way of giving feedback to people. I did have this conversation with one of my mentees last week, I don't know when, about not a mentee, it was a student actually, about feedback and feed forward. And I think this is an important point. So if you're giving feedback, you're reflecting on things that happened past. Cool. Because we have to do that. That's not something that we can avoid. However, you can also offer feed forward, meaning actions or ideas or steps to take to make a difference in future actions. I think that's where we really should be when we're doing lesson observation. It's just a thought. Okay, and then, hang on, I have to pull it up because it's a mess over here. So then I was watching TP4s. Hang on. Let me go into my lesson observations here. Okay, TP4s. Oh, I got to watch a new group too. So I switched groups, and I was watching 3 new teachers delivering their lessons, and to an elementary group. So this was interesting because I was switching because I was watching the intermediate group, and then so I got comfortable with those teachers, and now I'm watching the other group of teachers that started with elementary, but they're going to be transitioning or flipping over to the intermediate group. And how did it go? Oh, it was this one first. The first one was a vocabulary lesson. Yeah, it was fine. Again, there was no major issues, things. Oh gosh, all of these teachers build a pretty decent rapport with the students. They're still receiving lots of support in terms of suggestions and staging and building their lesson plans, etc. I don't think there was any major there wasn't any tech issues this time. Okay. So a couple of things that I did notice along the way, though. So it's funny because these candidates, obviously they're learning and they're kind of like navigating based on feedback that they receive. So some of the feedback that they received was about, apparently, because I'm just going off of reports because I've never actually observed this group, was things about, it's funny. Okay, let me preface this whole thing is it's funny because you can automatically notice exactly what the the teachers received feedback on the previous week, because it's the thing that they are most, I don't want to say awkward about, but like overly focused on. So some of them had received feedback on instructions, and that was very, very clear. Some of them had received feedback on teacher talking time. It was just clear. So they're really trying to reduce teacher talking time, and I would say that this is a good thing in general to do, because we do want our students to participate. However, reducing teacher talking time to a point where it's either unnatural or unproductive, because you do provide a good model for your students in class, is like, we have to find that balance. And it's interesting because the teachers get feedback and then they're trying to find that balance, So if they receive feedback on the instructions, for example, their instructions might have been too lengthy or confusing or not concise enough, or it would have been better to use some ICQs just to make it a little bit simpler and to check to make sure that the students understood what they were supposed to do. And then they jump from extreme to extreme. So either it's like extremely long and lengthy, or it sounds like it's coming off as a drill sergeant. Like, open this, do that, read that, 5 minutes. How much time? 5 minutes. Okay, go. Like it's so I mean, at the same time, you have to balance, and it's striking that balance, which is what they're playing with right now, and it's cool. It's cool to see. One of the other things is that I noticed that we are trying to keep energy levels up at all times during the lessons, and with some teachers, not all the teachers that I observed. And it's funny because energy levels don't have to be up at all times. There can be moments of like lull and contemplation and quiet. And I feel like that's absolutely okay, because people are digesting information. I know that me as a student will have to ask professors that I have and teachers that I have. I'm going to ask some colleagues actually how I am as a student. I'm quite active, and then I'm very quiet. So it's either I'm talking a mile a minute, 100%, or I'm just sitting there very, very quiet with nothing really to contribute. And I think it's because I just got to kind of go through these periods of, reflection and digestion, and the periods of hyper focus and activity. Anyways, so energy levels in classes, they do fluctuate, and don't be afraid of silence. Don't be afraid. I would say don't be afraid of silence. Don't be afraid of lower energy. Lower energy actually doesn't mean anything bad. It might be that they're just digesting the information, or kind of processing and sussing it out in their brain and organizing themselves a little bit. And be careful how you try to raise energy levels. Raising energy levels, again, it doesn't mean that it has to be loud and fun no, raised energy levels can just be higher levels of focus or attention. I'm a loud person, I think, in general. I laugh a lot. I'm kind of like a clown a little bit, but not everybody's like that. And sometimes when like start talking loudly or like, trying to get energy levels up, it's we just have to consider that some people are just not like that. So everybody reacts a little bit differently. But don't be concerned. I would say don't be concerned if there's lulls in your class or quiet times. Not lull necessarily, but quiet times in your classes, because quiet is not necessarily a bad thing. Quiet can be actually high levels of engagement happen during quiet times sometimes. So yes, I believe that that's it. It was interesting to see the other group. It was interesting to see the elementary students. It was good. It was just good in general. So I enjoyed it, liked it. I enjoyed switching too. And next week I'll be with this group again because I need to watch all of the teachers. I didn't see one of the teachers, and we have a couple more input sessions, including mine. So I'll see you next week.